Hi, I'm Gillian Utesch. I am the host of a Superwoman Handbook and the author of A White Collar Wife. A White Collar Wife is my personal story through love, loss, and joy. You can listen to it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you catch your podcast. I grew up in the eastern part of our state, and for those of you who are not aware of our geography, social climate, economic situation here in North Carolina, the eastern part of the state is not considered to be the wealthiest until you get to the beach, but that's the beach. And so growing up in that environment was a huge influence on my life. It taught me how to meet people where they are. It told me how to love people no matter where they're coming from, what car they're driving, what they're wearing, and that in our core, in our soul, we're all human. It was a very interesting place to grow up. To add to that, the population was about 100, and 99 of those 100 people were probably 100 years old. I mean, it was very nice to grow up in a space that was so established. And I say that because many of the folks who lived in my hometown, their families had lived there forever. So not only was there this sense of pride and family, but there was this history and knowledge of an area that was really cool to learn and be a part of it. And it taught me a lot about community. And I think that's what has made me so driven as an adult to create a Superwoman Handbook, to create standwithjane.org, because I want to create community for people so they can feel what I felt growing up in a very small town where I felt absolutely judged and rumored about and talked about, but y'all, that's just life. But also I felt like no matter where I could pull up to any corner and scream for help and someone would come out and help me. I felt completely loved and protected by my community. I also had probably 100 people in my graduating high school class, which was super cool and super weird all at the same time. For those who may be in a situation where you have 100 people in your high school class, be careful who you date and break up with because you're going to work through the population quickly. Just, piece of advice. But I say that because I loved hearing all the stories and the history from those that had lived there. And one of my favorite people to speak with was, I thought she was an old lady at the time, but she might have been 60 in all reality. But she lived across the street from me. Well, kind of kitty corner. And I would go to her house after school when I get off the bus. And my favorite thing about her was she had these cookies that looked like little flower petals, but had the hole in the middle you could put on your finger. So sometimes I called them flower cookies. Sometimes I called them ring cookies, just kind of depended on, where I was in the day. But I love to go across the street and chit chat with her and just hear stories about her life and about our town. And she would talk about the heyday. Before there was Highway 95, the main drag up and down the East Coast was US 17. And our town and many towns like mine grew up on that because that was 95 at the time, to say nothing of way back in the day. We were a shipping center, being on a river and a sound. It was very convenient for ships to get things in and out for trade, for us to move materials like US grown cotton. Y'all, I'm not going to go down a tangent, but I am such a just fangirl for US grown cotton. And so we had that, we had tobacco, we had soybeans, we had wheat, just all these products that we needed to live and survive and trade. We could move easily through that area. So it was very interesting to hear all those stories, people who were driving from Maine to Florida or, who were going down for vacation or coming back up to visit people in Richmond would take Highway 17. And I saw some really cool renovations that folks had done to their houses on the, second and third floors, because it was in an area where houses were built large. I don't want to say, huge mansions, but they were just built at a time when people had large homes because they were multi-generational and they needed to be large. And everyone in the house worked together to maintain the homestead. So as the dynamic shifted and culturally we weren't as multi-generational, what are you going to do with that space? And so they rented it out as like an inn, basically Airbnb before Airbnb. There was a big base there, and during World War II, that was all the rage, renting your third floor out or building, an apartment into your shed that was once your potting shed, making that. So I learned all these stories, and I just did not know how in my life, fast forward now, they would have such an impact on my survival mentally, emotionally, financially. So I realized it's important to talk about them because there is an entire generation that didn't have that lady across the street that you'd go to after school with the little ring cookies on her finger to tell you how life can evolve and change, and it's okay. That entire town evolved from a shipping import export epicenter to, the automobile with the road to when 95 was built. All of those small towns quickly were not, I don't want to say as visited, but cars weren't being kind of just naturally pulled through them. So they had to find new sources of revenue, new ways to differentiate themselves, new ways to bring in tourism because the town wasn't going anywhere unless it was going to fall off the edge of the earth. A cat was going to push it off the edge of the earth, or they were just going to say, oh, well, we give up. We're just going to board up and die. And yes, there were some of those towns that did just board up and die. And that is so heartbreaking for me because I see the individually owned, the small businesses that were probably in families for generations, the hardware stores, the dress stores, the the hair salons that have been there for so long to just evaporate. It's like watching a part of life just evaporate. And many times during the last year, I have felt like my hometown. I felt like, all right, I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to board up. We're just going to move on. This is over because Highway 95 is here. No one has a need for my location or my service anymore. And I had to keep going back to that in my mind that no, things move on. You just got to find a way to move on in your new environment. And when I would go across the street and talk with my little cookie lady friend, we talked about all things, not just our town and the history of our town, but we talked about being a woman. And one of the things she told me was, when you get married, it was so funny. She looked me straight in the eyes. So I'm going to look you straight in the eyes, which is weird when you have a camera because I don't know which camera to look at. She said, be consistent with your money. Every Friday, go to the ATM and take out $200, which I'm sure at her time was like $1 million. Because again, she was, 45 years old at the time. But she said, go to the ATM every Friday. She didn't say ATM, she probably said the teller. Go see the teller at the bank every Friday and take out $200, whether you need it or not, because that will become the money you need in the moment you need it. And I had no idea what she meant because I'd never seen divorce, never had seen couples act in a way like my husband has treated me in the last year. So it never, and yes, we're still married. I mean, many people ask me, why do you still wear your wedding ring? Because I'm still married. He won't divorce me. Be consistent because you may need that money at some point in your life. And it just never occurred to me, like my town, I needed a plan B. I needed to have a backup plan. What if shipping dies? What if the motor transport up and down the highway dies? What are we going to do to survive? And how are we going to bridge the gap between the moment of impact and the moment of solution? And so if you've been through something, the moment of impact is, whoa, when the stormtroopers come in your house and start taking shit out without authorization, that's the moment of impact. And then there's the moment of solution where you are like, okay, I'm grounded. I have a plan. I'm moving forward. The life in between that, the development in between that can be very different for different people. And I want to stop here and kind of pause and talk through that because if you're in that place right now, if you're in that in between, first of all, girl, I feel you. My liver feels you. But also, I want to just remind you that you're not alone. You're not the first person who has done this. You're not the first town that's done this. And it's going to be tough, but you're going to get there. So figure out a plan and stick to it is the best thing I can say. And I do hope that this handbook does serve as not only some comic relief for you, but some true help that you're on the right path in your journey. With my town, they found their path forward. they found a way to kind of identify themselves in the future. And the other thing I really liked about my stories with with my lady across the street was she was just so real. Another tidbit she said was never marry an only child, which I realized at the day and age when she grew up, there wasn't birth control. There wasn't knowledge of safe sex and all the information that we have now. So people had a lot of kids. People had a lot of siblings. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for someone to have 7 kids. So I can understand why it would be odd if someone just had 1 kid. What happened? What went wrong? That's one of these things is not like the other one kind of thing. But I later learned through my conversations with her that it was because they don't know how to care for others beyond themselves. And I didn't realize at that time in my mind, I was worried about what I was going to wear to school the next day. And if I was going to go to the middle school football game on Thursday, because that was the highlight of my life, that's what the cool kids did. And so I wasn't thinking about what she really meant by that. And it's such a big topic. And even now as an adult, it's a very big topic to try to grasp and understand about loving yourself first before you can love others. And now that I've realized that, I'm able to give a lot of grace. I'm not saying it's cool and acceptable, but I'm able to give a lot of grace to people who treat others poorly if they don't first love themselves. And that's really the place I've arrived with. He does not love himself. And there's a lot of speculation as to why. We could go down that rabbit hole. But he does not love himself. Thus, he is incapable of loving those around him. And once you realize that a fish can't fly, once you give peace and grace to something, once I came to that in my mind, it was a lot better. It was a lot better because I wasn't asking him to do something that he wasn't mentally, emotionally, psychologically, developmentally prepared to do. And part of that comes from being an only child. When you have a sibling, when you grow up in a large family, you learn to navigate your life around others. You learn that, oh, gosh, this person's doing something that kind of annoys me, but they're part of my family. I got to find a way around it. And you learn that in 100 different ways at 100 different times. And you learn that over years, over time, in scenarios that are digestible to your growth level at that time. And so he didn't have those. For example, if you're coming to the table and everyone's eating, you bring a fork for everyone because more likely than not, the dish you're eating, if you feel like it needs a fork, a spoon, a knife, some implement, those at the table probably need that too, unless they're going to use a random pair of chopsticks they brought in their pocket, or they're going to use their hand, they're going to use a candlestick. They're probably going to need a fork, a spoon, a knife as well. Most people have learned this, and they bring those implements to the table and share with others. Brian never learned that. He would just bring a fork and sit down. And at first, it frustrated me. And then as I learned more about just that scenario, I went, oh, bless it, bless it, bless it. Like, he didn't know. No one taught him that it's rude. No one said, dog, that ain't cool. Here, bring a fork for the rest of us. He hadn't been through that scenario before that moment. So he was, today's years old, being told, you need to bring a fork to the table for everybody. And I think that created, as we talk about the slow unraveling of our marriage, I think that did create kind of an undercurrent with us, because it then fell on me to be that person, to be that coach, to be that trainer, to love him enough to put my head in the lion's mouth and say, dude, this ain't cool. When you come to the table, bring a fork for everybody. He graduated high school the year I was born. And I think that created a lot of insecurity in our relationship, which I'll talk about on another podcast. But it also created a lot of animosity. And I'm older than you. How can you tell me what to do? Kind of thing. And so in those moments, I think that was there, even though we didn't really talk about it and it wasn't really acknowledged. So being an only child, bringing a fork to a table, it does make you just completely oblivious to what you're doing to others. So I try to go back to these stories in my mind in this last year when giving him grace, that I don't think he fully understands the horror that he is causing to me and his immediate family and to those around him, because it just goes right over his head. Another kind of thing I think about is I had to have some surgery done just a couple years ago. We were already married, and I had it was during COVID. And I had flown to Florida to have the surgery done. We had done a lot of research on which surgeon would be the best fit for this, which surgeon we wanted to work with, and it was a guy in Florida. So I fly down to Florida. One of my girlfriends, past life, past world, lived in Florida. And so she was going to kind of be my emergency contact because you had to have, because there's anesthesia involved. So I had to have someone not only take me to the surgery, but wait there. Like, I guess, should I die? I'd have a close kin to identify my dental records, but then also to take me back to the hotel. And I'd already booked the hotel for a week. I'd planned to recuperate because I had a follow up after. So we had a whole plan. And was going to stay home with our daughter and our dogs and kind of, keep life going, divide and conquer as, as couples do. And the night before, the afternoon before my surgery, my friend reached out to me and let me know that she had tested positive for COVID. And this is when COVID was really a big thing. We didn't really understand it. It was rampant. I was paranoid I was going to get COVID because I'd already waited a year on the wait list for this surgeon. So I was like, good Lord, if I get COVID and can't get this surgery, I'm really going to lose it. So, but anyway, so I couldn't be mad. Wasn't her fault. She caught COVID. But I'm like, crap, it is 4 p.m. I'm supposed to have surgery at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I don't know a soul in this town. I guess I could go make friends with a drag queen, because that's my demo. But I don't know like how I'm going to find my person to take me tomorrow. And so I called the office. And I'm like, hey, do you have people I can just hire and pay like secretary? It was a whole fiasco. So I called and to my joy, he immediately agreed. He goes, absolutely, I'll fly down right now. It was so cute. He took the entire, it's like a guy panic. I can just see him just running around the house with his hands just like flailing. And I wish I could have seen it because that was super cute. He took the entire dirty laundry hamper and put it in his suitcase and just packed that. And we'll deal with it when we get there. And I was like, and apparently our daughter was just, oh my God, where am I going to stay? What's going on? I mean, just total life disruption at the rip of a Band-Aid. But I was so grateful that he agreed. And I realized that that's probably common, that those of you that are in happy, stable, successful relationships, partnerships are like, girl, that's normal. Yep. We're talking about it because we need to normalize it. But in the life and relationships I'd had prior to that moment, I fully expected him not to come to Florida. I fully expected him to be like, well, girl, you got yourself down there, figure it out. And, drag queens, here I come. But because of just the way it worked, and, I've talked about in many other podcasts, squeaks when he walks. He is so cheap, which worked in his benefit to help fund the fiasco that has become I can't even call it our divorce because he's not divorcing me. Our play at divorce that has really given him the money and the ramp up he needed to fund our play divorce. And so 100 different ways how he saved and kind of positioned himself for that was, saving $100 here, $100 there. So he flew into the airport one city over that was, like cheaper, I'm sure, but about an hour one way. Well, that same afternoon, after I had gotten back, I had gone to get a massage because I wanted to prepare myself mentally and emotionally for the surgery. So it was when I got out from the massage that I got the communication from my girlfriend that she wasn't going to be able to, accompany me. And also in talking to my physician's office about kind of who could be a stand-in, they're like, oh, by the way, you got the memo about wearing button in the front pajamas. No, I've been talking with y'all for a year. We've been planning this for a year. No one mentioned not one time about button in the front pajamas. So other learning thing, if you're having surgery done, figure out if there is a dress code, special wardrobe you may need. Button in the front pajamas. So I now have 500 pairs just, out of safety. But anyway, so I stopped at a Burlington coat factory because it was right there off the side of the road. And I think, okay, I'll run in, I'll get some cheap pajamas. I'm never going to wear them again. No problem. Well, I had a really weird incident in that store where I'm quite confident I was nearly sex trafficked. It just, all the signs were there and it really spooked me. Compounded with just the heightened stress of not, having to solve the issue of not having a companion for surgery the next day. But also I think just the anxiety of having waited a year for the surgery. So on the way down flying, and I had told him about this. And I remember specifically saying, I'm going to the hotel room and I'm not leaving. I don't care if the hotel's on fire. I am not leaving this hotel room until it is time to go to get my surgery because I don't want to risk twisting an ankle or having an eyebrow fall out or anything that's going to, upset the doctor and him not want to do this. So he goes, well, I'm flying into such and such airport. because I had a rental car, I'm going to need you to come and pick me up. Bish, I just said I ain't leaving the hotel room and you want me to drive an hour one way to this other airport, an hour back. You're not landing till 1 in the morning. I have to take a fucking Uber. Only child, coming out. He goes, well, I don't want to spend the money on an Uber. If nothing else, people in life are consistent. I'll post some books. Oz wrote one recently called Read Your Mind. And it really kind of follows along this path. People are consistent, not only in themselves individually as humans, but in their type of human. I'm kind of like my little cookie lady friend was telling me about. And so if you can identify if you can get out of your own way enough, point, to identify who they are, to really look at their cards and own it, you can pretty much predict their next step. So I should have known that he would have bought the cheaper ticket, not want to pay for an Uber, and be completely oblivious that he was asking me to drive 1 hour there, 1 hour back. I could have gotten a car wreck. I could have gotten sex trafficked again. I mean, anything could have happened before the surgery after I'd said I'm not leaving the hotel room. And I had to, in that moment, put my foot down. I said, no, you are going to get a rental car or an Uber or something and get yourself to my hotel room because, as I said, I'm not leaving here. And so that was a big moment in our relationship for many ways. It was very nice that he would, and it was so cute, y'all. I like to tell the full story. I like to say the good things and the bad things. And that was, I think, one of the cutest things he ever did in our marriage. Because I opened up the suitcase. Now, granted, he normally packs 17 steamer trunks like he's going on the Titanic for a transatlantic trip and brings 4 French horns with him. But it was just this heap. And he goes, I just threw the laundry basket in it and I thought we'd deal with it when I got here. And I just thought that was so cute because that was so out of character for him. That was so not his normal process. And so it really did warm my heart that he would do that for me. And it really opened my mind to this is what I want in a partnership. This is what I want. I want to be in a relationship that I'm not questioning the loyalty. I'm not questioning is someone by my side. I want to know that they will throw the dirty laundry hamper in a suitcase and fly to Florida for me. Literally, I said, go to the airport and get the next flight. Like, just do that. But I think he had to connect in Kalamazoo or something, insane to make it through. But the flip side of that was, dude, don't ask me to drive an hour one way to a rando airport, which, to make it even more adorable, the hotel I was staying in was literally attached to the Miami airport. Like he could have ridden a luggage cart from the Miami airport to the hotel. But anywho, it saved him money that he could later use as a weapon against me with our judicial system, which I will go into some more in another podcast. I did want to talk about that today. Our legacy we leave, the benefit that we can get from those around us. I don't want to say the obligation, but the honor we have in sharing our stories and helping to guide the generation coming up behind us, because you don't know if the story you're talking about in that moment, eating ring cookies, dipping them in tea. And I thought I was so fancy. I was like, I'm drinking hot tea, y'all. Oh my God. We should go throw it in the river. But you don't know the impact that time and those stories are going to have on someone. And for me, it was, God, 30 years later that I really drew on that. And I was grateful that she had taken the time and the care to give me that attention when she didn't have to.